Okay.
Building a better Bay Area for a safe and secure future. This is ABC 7 News.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Z. Welcome to our daily program called Getting Answers. We're asking experts your question every day at 3 to get answers for you in real time. Today, though, is not just a regular show. We have a very special program for you. And before I get into the meat of it, this is what inspired it. Kamau Bell tweeted earlier this week, "My friend Daniel Wu and Daniel Dae Kim have had enough with America's anti-Asian violence, and they are using their platforms and resources to say no more. I stand with them and the entire Asian American community." Now, of course, he's referring to a surge in recent weeks in Asian American violence, in which seniors especially are targeted. But it may be reaching a tipping point. Many people are now speaking out. So joining me today to co-moderate this conversation is ABC 7 Mornings anchor Jobina Fortson, and we have two very special guests. Kamau Bell, social political comedian and host of United Shades of America on CNN, and actor Daniel Wu, who starred in Into the Badlands and Tomb Raider, along with the upcoming film Reminiscence. Welcome, Daniel, and welcome back, Kamau.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I cannot tell you how excited we are that you're making time for this conversation. Daniel, I'm going to start with you because 2 weeks ago we saw just a horrific violent attack on a 91-year-old man in Oakland's Chinatown. Yes. You and actor Daniel Dae Kim immediately offered a $25,000 reward to catch the person. Why did you two decide to use your money and visibility as actors to call this out?
Well, it was basically an emotional response to all these things that we've been seeing all year long. And seeing the 91-year-old man pushed down, the day prior, we saw Vishna Ratanapakdee die from being shoved to the ground. And so then seeing the next day another man being shoved to the ground, it was like, enough is enough. I can't just sit here and not do anything about it anymore. And so Daniel Dae Kim texted me right away. We got on the phone. He's like, let's do something about this. Let's put up a reward. And so we did that, hoping to get attention to the matter. And nothing more than that. And that's what happened in the end, is we brought a massive attention to the matter. Because the truth of the matter is our community has been boiling in this for a long time now, and we're actually at a boiling point. And what we wanted to address the issue and try to speak out for them before things got worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we show the picture of the Thai man that you referred to. So sad, that case. In fact, it prompted the Thai embassy to warn people against traveling to the U.S., and that's really saying something. We cannot have that continue to happen here. So I know that $25,000, because an arrest was made and that reward was not claimed. What will happen to that money now? Which, of course, you have $50,000 now, because I think celebrity chef Ming Tsai matched it.
Yeah, so we plan to divert those funds because we realize that we're not activists. We're not in that space, but we want to divert the funds to people who are already in that space and who are doing good work on the ground, who have been doing it for years. And so we're going to start putting those monies to community groundwork efforts.
All right. I want to jump in here and talk to Kamau, because you really came behind Daniel very quickly and retweeted him, showed your support. Why so strongly and quickly?
You know, me and Daniel, we met over the course of the pandemic. I think a lot of friendships have formed over Zoom and podcasts. And you know, I started following on Instagram, and you know, in the wake of George Floyd's murder, there's just a lot of talk of how we come together, and I certainly understand that part of that is like actually getting out of what is quote unquote our lane. So certainly I can speak up for Black people, but when I saw my friend Daniel on Twitter and Instagram talking about this, I felt like, well, I want to let them know, and the broader community, that I stand with them. That I'm not here to speak for them, but I want to stand and let everyone know I stand with them, and hope that's let people know in my community that they should stand with them too.
You know, when we look at these incidences, do you guys think these are motivated by racism or opportunism? Let's start with you, Daniel.
It's a very complicated matter, and there's a lot to unpack here, I think. There's obviously a lot of, you know, anti-Asian sentiment brought up by the pandemic, created by the previous administration using the China virus, Kung flu, all that stuff. There was that incident in Silicon Valley in Monterey with that CEO, Michael Lofhouse, who just spent 10 minutes berating this Vietnamese family while they're celebrating a birthday dinner. So there's tons of cases like that happening. Then there are these crimes of opportunity that are targeting the Asian community because they're perceived as weaker. And so there's a lot going on. There's these two different things going on, and we have to be clear of what we're talking about. And what Daniel Day Kim and I are about is against any kind of hate towards the Asian community. And it doesn't matter where it's coming from, because it's coming from all levels, all over the place. And so the misstatement we're trying to make is that it's not about one race against another race. It's that we've been under attack as an Asian community, and no one is talking about it, and we want people to talk about it.
Daniel, I want to pick up on that because the press has really been criticized in the way in which some of these attacks against Asian Americans have been reported, by not distinguishing the two, by, say, a hate-driven crime versus something that is just a terrible case of a crime of opportunity. And many viewers I'm hearing from feel as though that is just further feeding into the divisiveness and creating more issues. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, we have to look at the whole issue of race as one big issue, and that in some ways, systemic racism is trying to pit our communities against each other, and we have to be aware of that when we're moving forward and talking about these issues. But we need to talk about these issues first, and we need to be allowed to talk about these issues first. And I think the Asian community, out of all the communities, have had the smallest voice in all of this. And so we're trying to take this opportunity as a moment to be able to stand up and go, hey, we want to be part of this discussion too.
And I wonder if you two worry that as part of this discussion, there will be aspects of policing that are brought up in which it may put the gains brought on through Black Lives Matter, kind of set it back, if you will. Kamau, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, all these discussions are intertwined. So we don't want hate violence against Asian Americans. We also don't want the police. We also still, I'll speak for myself. I still want to defund the police. So I think that we can't look at the criminal justice system as being the solution for this thing. We're looking at systemic issues that were brought to the forward by the Trump administration. And so we can't, I think that's the thing that's important in this discussion, is to be able to have multiple discussions at once.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, do you think the idea of policing and community can coexist as concepts and work together?
Yeah, definitely. I think that if community groups get more involved and attack the issue from the base level, I think then you're making progress. I think the initial reaction for more policing and more patrolling is because it's a direct visceral response. People are getting hurt right now, and so people want to be protected, want to feel protected. But other than that, we also have to attack the issue from its base, level, and that's the most important thing. So I think it's a two-pronged approach that we have to be very careful about moving forward.
There is an argument, though, that it is not necessarily policing, but community. And I want to read just a quick excerpt from a viral tweet from a freelance journalist here in San Francisco. She is an Asian American woman and writes this. It went viral. She says here, every time there is an act of anti-Asian violence, I wonder how we will be used once again to advance a pro-police agenda, despite the fact that police have failed to keep our communities safe and have killed so many Black, Latinx, Indigenous folks. They've killed us too. Already, politicians are bottling up our grief and rage and selling it back to us as a shiny promise to keep us safe with more police, more prisons, less crime. As our elders are attacked, they capitalize off pain and tragedy to incite fear and anti-Blackness. Are you all seeing that play out as well? Let's start with Kamau.
I mean, I think that's why it's important that all of us who are dealing with America's structures of white supremacy and structural institutionalized racism, the Black community, the Indigenous community, Asian community, the Latinx community, that all of us work together. And there's certainly many activist groups who are already working on this. And the more we work together, and really the thing that people like Daniel and I can do is to highlight the voices of the organizations and the people doing the work, because they're already doing this work. And the more that we realize we're all working on this together, and if you look at last year's Black Lives Matter protests, those were multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-generational protests. And the more that we move forward as a group collectively, I think the faster we get to real structural change. And we won't allow, as Daniel said, basically white supremacy to weaponize us against each other.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys took Professor Ron Takaki's class from UC Berkeley or had the chance to meet him. He has since passed.
I couldn't even get into UC Berkeley. What are you talking about?
Me neither. Me neither. I went to Oregon.
I'm a stand-up comedian. I know it seems like I'm the
that's
second
wrong with our mission system, right? They're not measuring the true brilliance here. That's the problem, guys. No, but really the point that he made in A Different Mirror about constantly feeling like the foreigner because the sort of a master narrative that leaves people of color out of it. And then there's this zero-sum game that's kind of created in which one is pitted against the other, whether it was Irish and blacks back on the East Coast in the 19th century over jobs, or back here. But the truth of the matter is everybody, all colors, built the Transcontinental Railroad together, and we're all part of the narrative. So the more we can have that conversation, Daniel, wouldn't you say, the more things will get better in the sense of humanizing each other and understanding each other's needs?
Yeah, absolutely. That's getting everyone together is always a win. And what we're trying to highlight is that we don't want to be swept under the carpet. Things that happened in the past, American history, Chinese Exclusionary Act, Japanese Americans being interned during the war. We don't want to see stuff like that happening again. And so it's imperative for us to get together, provide a sense of unity, and make sure things like this as a whole don't happen, that we all stick up for each other and stop these things from happening again and letting history repeat itself. All
right, Daniel, come on, we'll take a short break on the air. Over on Facebook Live right now, though, you can join the conversation, ask your questions if you have them for the two gentlemen. And meantime, we'll be back in just a couple minutes to talk more about allyship and Hollywood's role in all this. We'll be right back. All right, guys, this is the part that scares me all the time because that's when I take a look at what people are saying on Facebook Live on our live stream when we're
oh, goodness.
I don't know why you would do that.
I don't know. I ask myself that daily. It is kind of sad, though, gentlemen, and I want to ask you this because you're active on social, but you guys know Kenjil Lopez, right? Kenjil Lopez, the chef that is from the Bay Area, went to Seattle. Great chef, great guy. He just recently quit Twitter, I think this past week, saying goodbye because it has turned into a place where there's just so much yelling at each other and not a lot of support, in his opinion. And, the place is less good, if you will, without him. But do you two feel like these conversations, such as we're having now, can be had on social anymore? How are you feeling about that, guys?
I think it's hard. I think it's very easy to get really emotional behind a keyboard, but when you're facing someone and you're looking them in the face and you're feeling their emotions and you're being empathetic, then you can have a real discussion back and forth. Because if you're just behind a keyboard and you say something extreme and that person says something extreme, it just escalates and snowballs into this craziness that becomes more divisive. It can lead that way. It really depends on who's tapping on those keys,
Yeah. Kamau, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you have to be, those of us who have a certain level of privilege, with me and Daniel in this category, we have to be really good at letting the stuff go that is nonsense, and also understanding that sometimes people come at you to hurt your feelings, but actually they have a good point, and you have to be able to sort through that sometimes. But yeah.
Okay, can I just pause you right there, pausing the big ideas, because I want to share with you, Trin Win Duong, who is on Facebook Live, and I see him here with us all the time, says, OMG, 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 I love Daniel Wu. So, Dan, you got something to say to Tree?
Thanks for your support, and watch out for what we're doing next, and we're supporting the community.
All right, sounds good. Guys, we'll be back on air in 15 seconds.
Back live in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
And we are back with Kamau Bell, socio-political comedian and host of United Shades of America on CNN, and actor Daniel Wu. Daniel and Kamau, you both grew up in the Bay Area, born here, and East Bay guys, I guess. And I grew up here in the Bay Area as well. And I wonder if it's just me or if it feels like things are more balkanized these days. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't really think about what race, what ethnicity, what country my friend came from. Ooh, let's give Daniel a chance to jump back in here. Okay. Sorry. And, we were united by what we liked to play with and what was our, I don't know, whatever we like to read. I feel like these days there's a little bit more of the emphasis on the racial label, for good or bad. And I'd like to see what you guys think, having grown up here, and have you seen that evolution, and what's your experience? Come on, I'll start with you.
I mean, you say I grew up here. I moved here when I was 25, but I guess I was still pretty immature at that point. But,
sorry.
But yeah, I think that
you were born in Palo Alto is what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. We can't underestimate the power of money, that how money has come in and really split the Bay Area up and has made people have to sort of figure out how to focus on their own community and themselves and how to stay.
Oh, by the way, we know you're not Daniel Wu. That's what the graphic says right now. Just goes to show you.
We're very close. We're about the same age. We both wanted to be Bruce Lee when we were kids. I get that.
We have a lot more in common than you think.
You're totally brothers and interchangeable. No, just kidding. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Come on.
But I think that, like, if you think about where the Bay Area used to be, where it is now, money, gentrification, tech money has come in and has really done devastation to the Bay Area. And some of that means that communities start to feel more under attack, and maybe that means we're pulling apart a little bit. And also, the pandemic is going to change the Bay Area forever. Those of us here who have privilege and resources and want good things to happen have to really be a part of making sure it doesn't change it for the worse. So I think a lot of this, we always look at each other like, why are we fighting with each other? When we have to look at outside forces like gentrification, tech money, the price of living in the Bay Area has gone up so much that the people that we sort of associate with the Bay Area, many of them can't afford to live here anymore.
Yeah. Daniel, does that mirror your experience? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, I left the Bay Area for 20 years and then came back and suddenly realized, like, wait, this is a different Bay Area than when I left. I left in '97 and then came back here. And it did seem like that there was much more racial tension than before. Yeah. And I remember growing up here, this was a really diverse community where we all kind of got along really well. And then suddenly, once the sort of pandemic started, there was this like serious hatred towards Asians that I never experienced in the Bay Area before. And I was just like shocked, like what is causing this, especially seeing it come from the Bay Area. I mean, there's other places in the country where I expect that to come from, but the Bay Area didn't seem like it was that kind of place. We have, a strong Latinx population, strong Black population, strong Asian population, and a strong white population. We all work together. And to see that happen here made me sad. It made me really, really sad. It made me wonder, what it was about. And what Kamau just said now made me realize, I think gentrification and money helped sow those divisions.
Yeah, I think a part of it as well is just the rhetoric that came from the highest level of office in our country over the last year, especially. I mean, that is a big one. Kamau, I see you pumping your fists. I'll let you go.
I mean, we cannot underestimate the last 4 years to invite the worst from people. That has actually, even Trump regularly targeted people. So when he starts to say things and his administration starts to say things, and I don't want to repeat them, but what Daniel said earlier about where the virus came from and jokes about it, that allows people to play to their worst selves and their worst instincts. And if that can happen here in the Bay Area where we know better, imagine what's going on around this country. So that's why I think this is a moment, certainly for Black Asian solidarity, because this is what the Bay Area was basically built on, in large part, was Black Asian solidarity.
I was going to say, and throughout history, there's been so much of that, fighting for the same causes, right? Labor rights, right?
Yes. Daniel?
This guy back here, this Bruce Lee poster. Bruce Lee, I don't know if you guys remember him, but he lived in Oakland and had a school in Oakland. And one of the things he did was I'm telling Daniel, let me tell you about Bruce Lee.
Speak on it.
You preach to them. You preach to them.
Okay, I'll preach to them. The thing that he did that is way more revolutionary maybe than the kicks and punches is that he was an anti-racist, and he taught Black people at a time where the Asian community, the Chinese American community said, don't teach outside of our race. He taught white people. So I think that the blueprint is here in the Bay Area. It's not just Bruce Lee. It's Yuri Kuchiyama. The blueprint is here. We just have to follow it. And there are activists following it. I want to be clear about that. It's those of us who aren't in those activist circles.
Okay, well, can I just ask, obviously Bruce Lee, everybody recognizes as an icon and symbol of strength. And, you two, you're both big guys and no one's going to come after you. I think the people who have been targeted, well, I mean, they might come after you, but, they're not going to pick a physical fight with you, Kamau.
It's all online that they do that, by the way.
But I mean, a lot of our elderly, for example, getting back to what prompted this conversation, is they are weaker, and how do you prevent attacks on that? But also, not just the elderly. I want to ask you, Daniel, you've been in Hollywood and making movies. Stereotypically and traditionally, Hollywood has portrayed the Asian not necessarily as the strong guy, but like the weakling. And how has that, perpetuated some of these, becoming a vulnerable victim of attack?
Well, you have to think about my career started in Hong Kong for 20 years, but I'm American. I didn't get the opportunities that most people would have gotten here. And so I had to develop my identity outside of the U.S. in order to come back here to have a career in the U.S. So that was already a statement in itself, I think, in some ways. But sorry, what was your question again?
I was just wondering if you think the roles, like what people see in the media,
Yes.
in the movies, and what they show of Asians,
Yeah.
you know, contributes to that victimization.
So my upbringing, what I saw of my representation on TV growing up, 16 Candles, Long Duck Dong, you know, characters like that, you know, and then in the 80s, the murder of Vincent Chin and nothing happening about it. You know, we've been set aside as others, or almost invisible in this society, in this community. And I think that's why the community is bubbling to a head right now at this moment, because it's like, it's been going on for a long time. It's not just this Trump era, but we've been seen as invisible Americans for a long time. And so the Asian community now, when we're being attacked like this, wants to stand up. But yes, the vulnerable elderly, this is an issue because everyone knows, not just Asian people, but everyone knows that the elderly Asians, they don't have cars, they walk around the streets, they carry cash on them. They're easy targets for people to go for. And so, you know, criminal elements look at that and go, that's an opportunity there.
Yeah, and we've seen a response already, which has been great in Oakland, where we see community members making their own foot patrols, getting out there as a form of an escort service, if you will. But what can we do beyond that? Have there been discussions that either of you all have had about how we can, I guess, utilize the resources that are already here, because we're not getting any more, not in this climate, in this economy, and this pandemic, right? So what can we do now? Kamau.
I mean, I think that a big part of this is actually supporting the activists and organizers in this neighborhood who often are doing the work on a shoestring budget. And those of us who have resources or even have a spare retweet can get out and support those people who are already working to make those neighborhoods safe, making those kids in those neighborhoods better educated. I think it's really about, I see this in the Black community, it's about supporting the orgs that are already on the ground. I think about myself, I think about Alice Wong, SF Direwolf on Twitter, has done a lot for me personally to help wake me up and tell me what's going on. And so for me, anytime I'm in these conversations, I think about how do we support the activists who already have the answers to these questions, but just need the resources to make it happen. And I think it's also about educating yourself when it's time to vote, to make sure you're voting for people who have the best interest for the community at heart.
All right, Kamau. Daniel, we'll take a short break on the air, but let's continue this conversation on Facebook Live right now. We'll be back.
In commercial break.
All right. I was really happy to see that the joint AAPI group statement this week demanding, addressing this issue. They demanded a three-prong approach, one of them being victim support, the other being intervention, and the third, very importantly, cross-community education and healing. And they named specifically Black and Asian communities like learning together and working together. And that to me was great. Daniel, were you part of drafting that?
Well, I'm seeing that across the board. I think everybody that's in that space knows how important that of an issue that is. And so that's definitely, whether it's that group or other groups, they realize that from the ground level, from the community level, is the most important place to start. Because, yeah, there's a lot of lofty talk about talking to Biden and all that kind of stuff. But what makes a difference is really what's happening on the street, on the ground level, and in your neighborhood and in your community. And so that's where we can really make a difference. So what Kamau was saying earlier was, I've been getting a lot of comments like, oh, I want to donate to the reward too. I want to add to the reward.
Yeah.
Well, take that money and put it into these community groundwork efforts that Kamau was talking about, because that's really where it's going to make a difference.
All right, Kamau, you've been putting a lot of both your own money, but also just your visibility and casting attention on teachers and their projects and educational opportunities.
Yeah, I think that for me, I was talking to Daniel about this the other day. I think those of us who have positions of power and influence pick the issue that means the most to you. And so for me, helping public schools be better is an issue that's very important to me.
Absolutely. All right, coming back out in about 20 seconds. But speaking of public schools, so important that in our curriculums, kids start to read authors of color, right? The narratives written by different people that comprise of this great American fabric that we are. So that's good to see. And I brought up Takaki because I stole my son's book. He's reading Takaki now in class. All right, coming back out. We are back with my colleague Jabina Fordson to continue this special conversation with Kamau Bell, socio-political comedian and host of United Shades of America on CNN, and actor Daniel Wu. Kamau, I saw, because I was looking at your Twitter feed, UC Santa Barbara, you have a virtual event tonight at 5 o'clock. It's called Ending Racism in About an Hour. So tell us, how can we end racism in 1 hour?
Please.
You're welcome. First of all, you're welcome that I'm going to take care of that tonight. I mean, I think it's a lot of things. One, it's actually understanding how to educate yourself and how to find trusted sources. Two, it's about actually doing the work, whether that means for you, whether that means getting outside your house. We're in a pandemic, so be safe. But it's also about understanding that these are huge structures that we're not going to change in changing our Facebook avatars or by sending out a tweet, that this is a long haul battle that we're fighting against ending white supremacy in this country. And so understanding that it is not easy, but you have to do something every day to end racism.
But what can white people do? Come on.
What can white people do? Man, whoo. What can white people do? White people need to really educate themselves on the history of this country, and also trust the black and brown folks and the Asian folks in their life and the indigenous folks when they tell them that racism is happening. Stop doubting that racism is not a force, it's an economic force. It's a force throughout this country that affects all levels of this country. And I think that means white people, you have to put yourself in an uncomfortable position and figure out where to get on the front lines, use your privilege to help. That could be financial, again, it could be social media. It also means talking to that uncle that you avoid on Facebook or in your house. That means actually you have to collect your people the way that black people collect our people, the way that Asian people came to Daniel this week to talk to him about some things. You have to be willing to go after your people, see yourself as a white person, and then when white people do things that are wrong, you have to be embarrassed as a white person the way that the rest of us as a black person are embarrassed when our people do things that are out of pocket. Have some white pride, white people.
Daniel, final thoughts from you and the next steps for all of us. I mean, you know, the videos will fade from memory soon. What can we all do to continue this fight?
I mean, this is really simple. We need to just have empathy and compassion for each other as human beings. You know, this is beyond race. I think this country in the past couple of years, we've shown that our ugliest side, and we need to get back to our good side. We need to get back to the side that shows love and compassion and what really America should be about. And what we talk about. You know, earlier this year, my daughter was on distance learning and she was singing "This Land Is Your Land." And I couldn't help but stand there and feel that was slightly ironic to hearing a class of, she goes to a Chinese immersion school, about a bunch of Chinese American kids or Asian American kids singing this song that wasn't really true. You know, and I think what we need to do is make that true, and do every effort we can to make that true and just be human and decent to everybody around us.
Well said. Daniel and Kamau, we'll take a short break on the air, but we'll continue the conversation on Facebook Live.
In commercial break.
Wow, that is super, super touching. All right, before I let you go, we have 2 more minutes on Facebook Live. Kamau, tell me, you just finished the taping, the latest season of United Shades. Where will you take us to this season?
Well, first of all, I accomplished my goal of not getting COVID while I taped this season of United Shades. So
I was so worried for you, man, when you were flying all over the place. I was
really worried. I just have my COVID test. As of yesterday, I had my COVID test says I don't have COVID. So that was my #1 goal. But we actually have an episode that's very close to this that is filmed in Philadelphia that's actually directed by Helen Cho, a Korean-American woman. And it's about when America is a majority-minority country, what that looks like. And we filmed it in Philadelphia. And we made sure to talk to a bunch of different racial groups in Philly, or people from racial groups, about what Philly is like as a majority-minority city. And so I think and we talked to some Asian American activists in that episode, so I'm excited about that. And we have one about policing that we filmed a lot in Oakland and Vallejo. We have one about the military we filmed in San Diego. We have one about protests we filmed in Portland. We have one about the transgender community filmed in Dallas, Texas. We have one about black people in STEM that we filmed in Atlanta. And we have one about wealth disparity in Charlotte that we filmed in South Carolina.
Wow, I'm super excited for all that, especially the Philadelphia episode, as I worked there for 4 years and love that city for so many reasons. And, you know, Independence Hall, the symbol of America and all that. And minority country, 2050 is the estimate, right, as to when the U.S. will become that? Is it the year 2050?
2045-ish. It keeps changing, you know. Trump did a lot to push that further out.
All right. So, Daniel, what about you? What's your next project? I know Reminiscence. Are you done taping that? That's with filming that. That's with Hugh Jackman, right? Do you have to sing or something?
Yeah, we filmed. Yeah, we filmed that before the pandemic, and now it's kind of just in this limbo land. I'm actually constantly waiting for the pandemic to end so I can get back to work. There's some film productions happening, but most movies are not going right now because it's too risky to actually try it. So I think once we're mostly vaccinated, we'll be back in that
All right.
track.
And we're out of time. Thank you both so much. Know that we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Wow, we are back, and thank you so much for joining us for this very special show, this interactive show, Getting Answers today. Jabina, I feel like I learned so much. What are your final thoughts?
Yes, definitely. And I think, you know, what's important, a message from this show is that Oppression Olympics, which is basically, if you don't help me, then I don't help you, are not helpful. And all they do is promote the ideals of white supremacy.
Yes, and anti-racism takes all of us, and in the end, we all benefit. So it's selfish, too, to work for it. Take care. All right, Jabina, you were fabulous. Thank you so much. Thank you, guests. Thank you, audience. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kristen.
Yay.